Just waiting for it to go live and then we'll start. Okay, we're live on LinkedIn. We just double check we're live on YouTube as well. Yes, we're live on both. We're ready to go. All right, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us today, Danny, and thank you all for
My
joining
pleasure.
another wonderful session. So, good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of A Day in the Life of a Cyber Professional. My name is Dr. Muchala Sisi, for those that do not know me yet. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Marshall Technology. And I'll be your host for today's journey into the realm of cybersecurity. And this is the third episode of A Day in the Life of a Cyber Professional for 2024. A series. This series is really designed to unveil the realities and the hidden treasures of a career in cybersecurity. And the session is part of my company's CSMP coaching program. It's a program designed to elevate people into lucrative cybersecurity careers. And it's, of course, my great privilege today.
Coach.
Oh, sorry, that's Siri. that's a very serious kind. Let me
It's part of the world we live in, right? It's technology, right?
I know, right? Okay. So yeah, again, it's my privilege to welcome you today, our special guest. He's just in case you don't know, he's a multifaceted cybersecurity expert. He's a celebrated speaker. He's an accomplished corporate trainer, and he's a best-selling author. He's renowned for his innovative approach to reducing cyber risks. And he's an anti-fraud coach. He has excelled in engaging, educating, and empowering employees through motivational keynote-styled talks, transforming cybersecurity awareness from a boring task into an empowering cultural pillar of an organization. He's a great man, really. And he doesn't just teach or advise mid to senior level leaders. He also ensures that cybersecurity becomes a key part of any organizational structure. Please join me as I welcome Danny Pehar to the show today. Welcome,
Thank
Danny.
you. Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. Before we start with the program today, I would just for the case of for those that are joining us for the first time, I just want to remind us of how we run the program. So for the next 30 minutes, I will be asking the questions, not anybody else. Asking a few questions I have prepared for our guest today. And the last half hour of the program, we'll open it up to the audience. So we have people joining us directly on Zoom. We have people watching us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So we are only able to take questions from Zoom and LinkedIn. So for those on LinkedIn, put the comment in. I'll read the question out to our guest. For those on Zoom, just unmute and ask the question when the time comes. For now, let everyone that is not Mukhtar or Danny just mute themselves. And without further ado, we can start when you're ready. Are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
Right. Thank you for joining us. I'll just, I know I most likely did not do justice to introducing you when I did. So before I go into my questions, I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll get into the questions.
Sure. Okay. Once again, my name's Danny Pehar, and I've been in the cybersecurity industry for the past 20 plus years. I feel like I've been saying for the past 20 years, but for a long time. I started saying that a while ago, and I just stopped counting after 20. Right.
Yes.
So it's been the only adult job I've ever had. It's been the only career job that I've ever had, and it's been a wonderful journey. And I love talking to new people about it, people who haven't considered it or maybe are thinking about it. And I love telling them about it because I just think it's been such a wonderful experience for me, and I know that it's something that can be a wonderful experience for so many others. And by the way, I do really appreciate what it is you're doing, that taking the time to find people to come on your show, to put these things out there. I know that takes a lot of work, and you're doing a lot of good work, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
So thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. And I guess yes, it's time to get into it. And I hope everyone is ready because I am. Okay, my first question is, so what initially drew you to cybersecurity? I know you said it's the job, that's the job you've always ever had, but just wondering, how did you get there? What drew you to cybersecurity? And you can tell us a little bit about your background and how it influenced your career path.
Sure, sure. So it's funny because I've listened to other interviews where other people like me have answered that question. And so many times when I would hear people answer the same question, it would be a very inspiring answer, right? And they would say how I came from a long background of technology, and maybe they would say something like, I wanted to secure that technology, so I wanted to try something different. Or maybe they would come from the world of physical security. I knew some people that came from law enforcement, and they decided, they wanted to see the more technical aspect of that, right? Maybe it was somebody from some type of business, and they saw the risks associated, and they wanted to try, right? And those answers are always really inspiring. For me, unfortunately, it's not at all inspiring. It's very, very humble, right? So I'll take you back. So back before the cyber and security industry, my aspirations weren't very big. I kind of came from the family where I was told, listen, you're either going to work in a factory or you're going to work in a restaurant. That's just our family's lot in life, and that's just what we do. And I worked in all kinds of factories. I think the first job I had, I was in grade 6, and I've been working since grade 6. And every job that I've ever had would involve me sweating a lot. It would involve me working with a lot of things that were very hot, right? So factories that were very hot, or inside near a dishwasher within a restaurant where the steam of the dishwashers hit me in the face, very hot there as well. And no chairs. I never had a job where I got to sit down, right? And I remember one time I was doing a sandwich delivery for one of the restaurants that I worked at. And the sandwich delivery was to an office. So I walked into the office, and I noticed it was all nice and air conditioned, right? I didn't see anybody sweating, and everyone was sitting on chairs, right? And I was like, this is glorious. I mean, you guys get paid to come here? I'd come here for free, right? And I remember I met my wife. I met her at the time. I met her in high school, and we started dating right at the end of high school. And so we'd been dating for a few years. And I remember I was thinking, where's this going? We've been long enough. We've been together long enough. I should ask her to marry me. But I was thinking, I don't know how to do it on the salary of these factories and these restaurants. It wasn't working out for me. Right. And so I was like, I need to break the cycle here. I need to try something new. I need to work in an office. Right. And I was like, and also, in addition to, more money and sort of changing my life, I also just wanted to work in a place where I could sit down for once, sit down while I worked, and be in a nice air conditioned room while I worked, right, without steam blowing in my face. And so I remember I literally I was looking in an old fashioned newspaper, like it wasn't online. I was literally looking in a paper, right? And I remember I saw a job, and it was a cybersecurity job, but I noticed that it said like entry level, like it had the word entry twice, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I don't even know what cybersecurity is, but I have the feeling the way they wrote it. I'm like, I have the feeling it's a job that not a lot of other people want, because it seemed like it was very, very entry, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to apply, right? And I'm going to be like, I know I have no business to apply for this, but I'm a hard worker and I'm friendly, and I'm going to lead with that, right? And I remember I went in for my interview, and I remember they were basically telling me, like, the last 3 people that had this job all quit because it's very entry level, and you're not gonna like it,
Yeah.
right? And I remember I just asked, like, do I get one of these chairs, like one of these nice chairs? Do I get to work in this room with this air conditioning? Because I'll tell you, like, this is hands above any job, better than any job I've ever had, right? And they're like, yeah. And that was it. That's how I got started. Right. I was
Wow.
humble, and I think they saw that. I think they appreciated that. And they're like, you know what? They're like, I think if we hire this guy, yeah, he doesn't fit the mold that we normally do, but the
Mhm.
people we're normally hiring, they're not lasting because they all think they're
Yeah.
better. Right. So my origin was not inspiring. It's very humble, but that's what did it. And you know what? Sometimes I think these stories, sometimes it's good to be told, because
Absolutely.
sometimes there may be somebody thinking, well, I'd like to try that, but I don't have that fancy background that that other person
Mhm.
does. And so I always tell people, don't let that stop you. Don't let the fact that you think you might not be qualified to stop you. If you've got the
Absolutely.
will, if you've got the right attitude, and if you've got the if you're a hard worker, you can find a way, right? So
Absolutely.
there you go. That's how I got into it.
Thank you. I don't know how that is not inspiring. That is definitely inspiring. It's interesting that you mentioned that. I was talking to someone last weekend, and the person talked about like starting as a bus driver and all of that. I said, that is the story to tell, to sell. You did what a lot of people would think is impossible. And that's exactly your story too. That is inspiring. I'm sure a lot of people here are like, oh yes, I can do it too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
anybody can,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And I tell people, forget the DR in front of my name. It's just a title, but then anyone can do it. And I'm telling you,
Sure.
yeah. And people have done it. Why not? Why not you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's always been my motto. Hey, someone else has done it, right?
Exactly.
Why not me, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing. That would take me to my next question. So, you talked about your journey, just considering that some of the people here, or probably a lot of the people here, they're new, that they're just starting or they're just getting into their first role. So for someone new to cybersecurity, what fundamental skills and knowledge do you consider essential?
Yeah, so really great question. So a lot of times, when people talk about, and even when people have talked to me about these things over the years, right? When I'd ask such questions, people would focus more on hard skills, right? And they might talk about, you want to study this particular hard skill about security, or you want to study this, or you want to study that. I honestly think, though, when it comes to being new to this industry, what you want to focus on is not the hard skills. The hard skills are going to come. Absolutely. Whatever skill you need for whatever it is that you want to get into, that will come with time. But what you want to focus on when you're new to something is you want to focus on the soft skills, right? There's three in particular that I'd say you want to focus on. One is you want to have the right attitude, right? You want to have the attitude. At the end of the day, I don't care what industry you're working in. At the end of the day, I don't care who it is that you're sitting down to talk to for a job. If it's a CEO, if it's a VP, if it's any C-level executive, at the end of the day, people want to work with people that they like. So sometimes when we approach something and we approach it with the wrong attitude, and we approach it with maybe a level of smugness or a lack of humility, right? That's something that turns people off, right? I remember there was one person who came to me for some advice, and I was coaching them along with their career. And they were telling me, they're like, Danny, I want to get into cybersecurity. I took a few courses, right? And they're like, but every job that I've applied for, they're turning me down, right? So let me see some of these jobs. Let me see your resume. So I'm looking at all the jobs they applied for, and I'm looking at their resume, and I'm like, you do realize, I'm like, that this is asking for things that you don't have. It's asking for, 3 years experience. And I'm like, but you don't have that, right? I'm like, I think what you need to do is you need to look for something that's entry level. Right now, you're at an entry level,
Mhm.
right? And I'm like, you got to have a little bit of humility, and you got to tell them, I'm willing to do what I need to do to get into this business, right? And so he went back and he thought about it. He was a little bit upset at first, but he thought about it, and then he did go. And I'm like, once you get in, you can get promoted from there, but you got to get in first, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to have that attitude that says, like, I'm willing to do the work, and that's what people want to see, and not just the right attitude for the person you're interviewing with or for your boss, but the right attitude for anyone. People also like to see, how does this person interact with their coworkers, right?
Yes.
Because you don't want to hire someone that's going to be toxic, right? Even if they are good, but they're bad to everyone else, at the end of the day, it's going to create a problem for the rest of the company, right? So attitude is absolutely key, right? The right positive attitude. Another thing is the understanding of the basics. I mean, so often, so many people are so concerned about being great at great things. They want to be great at the proper certification. They want to be great at the really big, great things. We're so concerned about that sometimes we forget about being great at the very basic things, like showing up on time, right? Like giving somebody something that you had agreed to give them within the time that you agreed to give them. So if someone says to you, hey, I'm going to need that report on Monday by 3 o'clock, then yeah, on Monday by 3 o'clock, if you agree to that, you better have that report done, or at the very least, call them before 3 o'clock, letting them know why you don't have it done and why it can't be done within that time, and then reset expectations, right? What you don't want is you don't want them calling you Monday at 3:30 saying, hey, where is it? Oh, well, something came up. Really? Then why do I have to call you?
Yeah.
Right. I think when we really nail the basics, when we really nail that extremely well, that's when we come across as very, very valuable to who we're working for, regardless of our actual skill set. I know, like as an example, when I'm hiring somebody, let's say to do some work around my house, right? You got some people that might come by and they might have actually be much more talented in the chosen skill set than someone else, but they're not reliable. They don't come on time. Sometimes they don't show up at all. Those people I never call back. I don't care how talented you are. If I can't rely on you, it doesn't mean anything to me. Right. But if you're a little less reliable, but sorry, rather, if you're a little less skilled within what I need you to do, but you are super reliable, that to me is worth 1,000 times more. Right. So you really want to nail those basics very well. Right. The basics of timing, the basics of common courtesy. Right. And then the other thing is that I'd say what you really want to master is you want to master good communication. If you have something to say, if you have an idea, you want to make it very easy for somebody to understand what it is that you're saying. And you want to make it very easy for your idea to come across. I've seen it happen so many times where, you've got two people and you got one person who's a really good visionary, a really good thinker. They got some really good ideas. But when they go to explain those ideas, they don't explain them very well. Somehow their communication gets broken down, right? And it's not being understood. Someone else comes along, they hear them, but they're a better communicator. They repeat that same idea, but in a way that's much better. And all of a sudden, they're the ones getting promoted, right?
100%.
And
100%.
it's funny because I remember I was invited to speak at a school about this, and I was telling them my thoughts about the most important thing that new people need to take to any job, and I was talking about those three things. And the professor asks me, he goes, Danny, I don't know if you did this on purpose. And he's like, but the three things that you mentioned were attitude, basic communication. That's ABC. And I thought, well, that's actually just a very happy coincidence. Yeah, I didn't plan that at all. I'm like, but that actually sounds really nice when you put it like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. The ABCs.
The ABCs, right? So I would say, guys, whatever your skill set is, whatever aspect of cybersecurity you've chosen to focus on, the most important thing when you're entering something, especially in your early days, it's more important in your early days. When you're a 20-year veteran, it becomes important, absolutely, but it's not as important as it is in your early days, in those first 5 to 10 years, right? You want to make sure you have your ABCs of soft skills, so the right attitude, following the basics really well, and of course being able to communicate extremely well. And as a part of communication, not just what you say, but being able to listen to what it is that people are asking for, right? So yeah, that's what I would say to focus on.
Thank you very much. I'm definitely taking that, the ABCs. It's it's interesting that you said all this and I didn't hear anything technical. The funny thing, when people talk to me, a lot of times say, oh, what tools do I need to learn? What certifications do I have to take? Like, okay, yes, those things, they're good, but no, that's not where you start. That's
Well, you know
not.
what? I'll tell you something. When I worked in a quick side note, just to comment on what you just said.
Yeah.
When I worked in the restaurant in industry, I worked in a lot of different restaurants. I remember one of the things that I would do a lot is I worked in a lot of pizza kitchens. Okay. When we would hire somebody to make pizza, one thing that every new employee had in common when we would first get them to make their own pizza, every new person was terrible at making their pizza. I don't care where you came from. I don't care if you made pizzas at home, even if you made them in another restaurant. In our restaurant, we had a specific, yeah, this is a very specific way of doing it. So you're not going to be good at first. It's nothing, doesn't say anything bad about you. It's just, this is something new, right? And so with every person that was ever bad at making a pizza, what's one thing that they all had in common over time? They all got better. That's naturally what happens with skill, right? You do something once, you might not be good at it, but you do it enough times, you will get better at it. Everybody does. However, those employees that didn't show up on time and that had a bad attitude in those early days, what happened when they got more comfortable? They got worse. As the more
Oh,
time went on, they would show up even later. The attitudes would even get worse. So a bad attitude and things like the basic soft skills, the more comfortable you get, the worse you get. With skill set, the more time you get, the better you get.
there you go.
That's why I don't need you to have a perfect set of technical skills on day one, because I know that'll improve with time. But I do need you to have really good soft skills, because that will only get worse if it starts bad. Right.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
that's why I don't like to focus on the technical aspect
Yes.
when I speak to people considering this industry.
100%. And I agree with you 100%. Even when people join our program, the first thing, and again, I tell them I'm not a salesperson. If you're joining, you have to come with the right attitude. If you're attracted to the money and not the work that is required, I don't see how you will survive. Really.
100%. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. So let me, okay, I know we're running a bit out of time, but I'm happy to go over if we need to. Let me go to the third question. So could you share any challenges you faced when starting in cybersecurity and how you overcame them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest challenges would be, based on what I told you, would be obvious, being that I didn't really understand the industry.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the ways, I'll give you an example. I remember I was on a call, and it was with my organization, and it was with the Toronto Police Services, and it was a security-based call. And Toronto Police Services needed some help on something, and we were the ones that were supposed to help them. So they had a bunch of their engineers on the line, and I called a bunch of engineers from my company. We had a bunch of engineers on my line, right? And I'm running the phone call as best as I can. It's a conference, or this is before the days of screen share. There were no cameras. We're all on the phone, right? And I remember I'm starting that call and I'm nervous because I don't know what I'm talking about. All I know is Toronto Police Services need our help. And I know I have a feeling we can help them, right? So as I'm running the call, I'm like, hi, Toronto Police Services, can you list who you are? So they kind of list who's on the line. I write everyone's name down, and I go, okay, from team, my company, can you list who you are? They run down their names, right? So I got everyone's name, and I'm like, maybe Toronto Police, let's start with you. Can you let us know what exactly it is that you're looking for, right? So they list what they're looking for. I don't understand anything they're saying, right? And then when they finish, I go, okay, team, my company, can you list, like, do you have any questions for them to help understand that? I just kept going back and forth, back and
Yeah.
forth. Now, what do you think? Now, what do you think? Okay, can we get them, can we get them a project write-up for what we would do? And how long is that going to take? And I basically just went back and forth. I recapped everything numerous times. I mentioned everyone's name, right? And recapped everything. And I said, okay, we're going to reconvene in such and such time. And the plan is we're going to have this, we're going to have that, we're going to have this, we're going to have that, right? And I hang up. And I remember when I hung up on that call, I felt really bad. This was, I think, maybe my second week, third week in, and I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome because I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm like, I'm the only one on that phone that had no idea what anyone was talking about. And I'm like, and I think it was obvious because I just kept saying, and what do you think about that? And what do you think about that? And I kept trying to move it forward. Okay, now what are we going to do? And what next? And this and that and the other thing. And so it wasn't until the VP from Toronto Police Services, they phoned me and they go, listen, Danny, they go, I just want to say, like, you were amazing on the call. And they go, without you, they go, I don't know how all of us would have been organized. There were so many engineers on that call. And they go, you're the one that kept moving it forward. You're the one that kept us on track. And you're the one that wrapped a plan around this. Now we have a timeline. Now we have a plan, right? And that's when I realized, you know what? I was necessary on that call. I was adding value, right? And so the one, to go back to the core of your question is, what's the challenge? The challenge is I didn't know what I was talking about, but how did I overcome it? I found another way to add value, right? So you might not be an expert at everything, but find a way to do something that someone's like, wow, I like that person was there because they did the following. As long as you find value, as long as you find a way to add value, people are not going to be asking, what are your credentials? Where'd you come from? Where did you study in school? That will matter less. If every time I talk to you, if every time I get off the phone or get out of a meeting with you, I think, wow, you really added value. You're a handy person to have around. That's how you not only overcome a challenge, but that's how you get promoted. And that's how you start to succeed within business, within your career, right? So that would be what I would say to anyone is if there's something that you're not good at, find another way to add value, and you'll always find a home within business and career.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree 100%. And two things are, so the first thing you said was, okay, that makes sense. Something I read recently. Double down on your strength. Do not focus too much on your weaknesses. That's exactly what it is. Yes, there will always be weaknesses, but do you have strength that you can leverage? And the other
100%.
thing that you said, talking about value, when people ask about how do I answer, tell me about yourself. So the worst way to answer it is to list your credentials because no one really cares. Tie who you are to the problem they have and how you can solve it. That is the best way to make an impact. If you can't do
100%.
if you can't do that, then I don't know how that interview would go. So thank you for sharing that. That definitely why would I pay for anything? I pay for value,
That's
not
it.
for credentials. So exactly. Thank you so much. Okay, that will take us to number 4, which is for professionals transition into cybersecurity from different fields. And I think you've touched on this earlier. What advice would you give to them to facilitate a smooth transition? If
So
they
I would say there's a few things I'd want to touch on, right? One is take advantage of networking opportunities. The cybersecurity industry, they love having conferences. There are so many conferences, and even some of the conferences that seemingly have a cost to them, right? If you do a little digging, a lot of those costs aren't necessarily real costs. You could very easily find a free digital coupon to get yourself a free ticket to that conference, right?
Mhm.
And there, you're networking and you're meeting people, and you're meeting people who could potentially be the very next person that hires you. So networking is huge, right? Another thing is small, simple tip, but sign up for Google Alerts, right? I've signed up for Google News Alerts for cyber crime, cyber breaches, breach, hack, for various terms. You won't have time to read them all, but I sift through it every day. I look at what's new, what's interesting, right? And that's really what allows me to stay on top of things, right? Don't be that person. So what if you studied cybersecurity 20 years ago? But what does that mean today? Right? Don't be that person that's hung up on something that you don't have behind you. Stay on top of what's hot, right? Now, as here's a bonus point to that. As you're studying what's hot, ask yourself how it ties into the cybersecurity 5-point framework. The 5-point framework is identify, protect or prevent, to protect against trouble, to prevent against trouble, detect to detect trouble, respond, and recover. If you find out how something connects to that, that will allow you to predict how big it might be in the future. And I'll give you an example of how this worked for me. I remember when I first heard of cyber insurance, it was in 2014. And I remember there was a client had cyber insurance. They were telling us about it. And I've been doing cybersecurity up to that point, my whole adult life. I never heard of cyber insurance before because it was so new. And when I found out what it was, I remember thinking, this is going to be huge. I have to study this and I have to really know everything about this because this is going to be big. And I had a lot of friends of mine telling me, why do you think this matters to us in any way? Why are you spending so much time studying it? Right. And I go, yes, because they're thinking it's not cybersecurity, Danny, it's insurance. That's totally different. Right. But it fits into the framework. I knew right away. I'm like, what's our framework? What's the last point of the framework? Right? The last point of the framework is recovery. Okay.
Yes.
Nothing in the cybersecurity world can allow any organization to financially recover from any cybercrime. Cyber
Yes.
insurance is the only thing that can allow for that. Right.
100%.
I go, so even though we don't think that it's cybersecurity, it absolutely fits within the cybersecurity framework.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because of that, my simple understanding of connecting it to that allowed me to make the right move and spend a lot of time. And that actually turned out to be very fruitful for me. Right. So you want to stay on top of what's new and you want to constantly ask yourself, how does it fit into that 5-point framework? And then the last thing that I'll mention is be humble. Right. When you're tackling something new, when you're the new guy in a completely new area, it's okay to be a bit humble. I think sometimes in our social media world, I think we've become used to being the star of everything that we do, right? It's okay to not be the star. And we got to remember when we're the new guy, it's okay to take that thing that's at the beginning. If I snubbed my nose, back, prior to 20 years ago, if I said, well, that's so entry level, I'm sorry, but I'm too good for that. I never would have started that industry. Don't shoot yourself in the foot before you even get started. So remember the importance of being humble. Absolutely. Right.
Thank you. And what just reminded me sometime last year when the opportunity to work on AI security came. It's like, oh yeah, AI is a big deal. Everyone wants to use AI. Definitely that's a big deal in security. With
Sure.
working with a lot of data, a lot of things are going to go wrong. And we all know cybersecurity. It's not about if things will go wrong, it's about when they will go wrong. Right?
100%.
And how ready are we when they go wrong, right? So thank you for that. And okay, that ties to number five, and we just continue that thought process. So now you've talked about networking and the industry. Can you type how about mentorship? How does mentorship come into this?
So mentorship, I find, is incredibly important, and that's incredibly important. I don't care what the industry is. I think anyone working with a mentor is going to do better, right? So you want to find the right mentor, that is right for you. Somebody that has done something or succeeded in a way that you want to succeed in, that you want to accomplish it, right? So you want to keep your eyes open for what you think makes sense to you. Um, if you come across them, whether it be at a networking event or maybe you send them an email, through LinkedIn, right? You want to be sincere about it, right? Don't don't say to someone, "Oh, I'd love to mentor you," or I'm impressed by you. If you just want them to hire you, maybe you're not really being sincere. You don't care if they're your mentor. You just want them to give you a job, because
Mhm.
that's going to come through, and then that's going to, in the end, end up doing more harm than good. Good. That's going to end up, not looking good on your reputation, right? So you want to be sincere about who you approach. Um, and you want to be nice about it. You want to be flattering, right? Keep in mind, the person being the mentor, they're doing you a favor, right? And so you want to tell them what it is that you like about them. You want to tell them what it is that maybe you read an article, maybe you've researched, or you're impressed by what they've done, right? And so you want to say, listen, I know that you did this. I'm really impressed by that. I'd love to learn from you, right? And I think that that's really a good way to approach it, is do some research to see who would make sense for you, be sincere about it, and be flattering and be humble about it, right? And I do think that yes, everyone can benefit from a mentor, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Can't argue with that for sure. If you have someone to guide you, you can take a 5 year step. A 5 year journey can take you like a few months if you have the right person guiding you.
100%.
Walking that journey on your own, of course, you go around different places that you shouldn't. So mentorship for sure, I agree 100%. My last question before we open it up to the audience, I'm sure they have questions. So what are common misconceptions you've seen in the cybersecurity field? I'll tweak this question a little bit. And because I know you've done some wonderful things in the space, the first part of it would be, how have you addressed some of them? And the second part would be, how would you address them?
So in terms of the misconceptions, there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
A big part of, if I look at, what I do specifically to fraud, when and cybersecurity awareness, right? Really, a big part of it is speaking out against these misconceptions, right? So I'll give you some quick ones, right? Some of the ones where someone would say something like, "Hey, listen, I've got no money. Like, no one's gonna want to steal my identity because I have no money," right? That's actually a huge misconception, right?
Probably
With
the
your
case.
identity, people can do all kinds of damage, regardless of how little money that you think you have. There was a case where somebody that I had worked on, they were a victim of identity theft. The perpetrator stole 150,000 in their name. And 8 months prior to that, they were rejected from the bank for a loan request of only $20,000. So they're saying, I don't get it. How is it that the real me, I can't take out 20,000 from the bank, but the fake me can take out 150,000, right? Yeah. And in that guy's case, what they did was, they basically they forwarded his mailing address, and within that time, they requested numerous mini loan applications. So those commercials on TV, right? You got bad credit, no problem, right? We'll give you a loan of
Yeah,
500 to
yeah.
$1,000. That's what the person did, is they took out those mini loans that don't attract a lot of attention,
Mhm.
enough of those mini loans to equal 150,000, right?
Wow.
Fact of the matter is, everyone's a target, and the bad guys don't care, about your profile as much as we think that they might. So that's one of the things, right? But I'll bring it back more to the subject matter that we're talking about today, and about careers and about things like that, right? So, and I'll bring it back to that, and I'll bring up two other ones, to wrap it up. So the one that I'll bring up is, sometimes people think cybersecurity is only for IT, and the only career that you can get with cybersecurity is within IT. That's absolutely not true. right? There's a huge career with cybersecurity in law. And when I say law, I don't mean law enforcement. And yes, there is that too.
Yeah.
But I don't mean law enforcement. I'm talking about lawyers, right?
Yes.
One of the
Mhm.
most important roles right now when somebody gets breached is your breach coach lawyer. And it is so thorough and it is so heavily involved. You could fall in love with cybersecurity and never have anything to do with IT. You can be a lawyer and just focus entirely on being a breach coach
Yeah.
lawyer. That is an area of law that's a full-time job, and people don't do anything else.
Mhm.
There's insurance, right?
Yeah.
Again, nothing to do with IT. There now, cyber insurance has become so big and so strong. It's a complete area. There are certain organizations that's the only insurance that they provide, right? Here's another one that most people don't even think of: PR. I remember I came in and there was a PR VP from a PR agency, and they were speaking about cybersecurity. So I wanted to hear what they had to say. I was shocked at how thorough their messaging was and how much they understood about compliance, about regulatory needs, and about the way that we're supposed to respond to things. Again, you can have a career, a cybersecurity career, and never leave the PR world, right?
Mhm.
And then, of course, business, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you just want to sell cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and that's okay too, right?
Mhm.
So it's so much bigger. It touches so many aspects beyond IT that we wouldn't even think of. So don't think that that's the only part of cybersecurity that you can be a part of. And all those things that I mentioned: cybersecurity law, cyber insurance, cybersecurity PR, cybersecurity for business and sales, they're all exploding, right? And they're all doing extremely
Mhm.
well. And then the last thing that I would say is sometimes people think that cybersecurity is just for protection or just for prevention, right? So, as an example, sometimes when I'd be giving a talk on the importance of recovery after a cybercrime and what to do and what to think and different things that you should do, I remember I was at a talk and I was talking about the importance of recovery, and somebody came to me and said, "Well, Danny, I guess you're giving up on cybersecurity. You're spending all your time talking about recovery, right?" And I was like, no, I'm not giving up on cybersecurity. That's all a part of cybersecurity. It goes back to that 5 point framework that I was talking
Yeah.
about, right?
Mhm.
That 5 point framework was not something that the cybersecurity world invented. That's existed way before cybersecurity even came around. That is a safety framework. And
Mhm.
in good safety of any kind, it has to do, of course, with the prevention of trouble, the detection of trouble, the responding to trouble, and the recovering from trouble.
Okay.
All of that is wrapped around in good cybersecurity. So when you're looking for a career, that's also what you might want to ask yourself: is what side of cybersecurity? Like, once you've realized the business unit, maybe it's IT, maybe it's legal, maybe it's insurance, maybe it's PR, maybe it's business. Once you figure out the business unit, you also might want to ask yourself, what side of the framework do you want to sit on? Do I want to sit on prevention or detection or
My
response
response. Yeah.
or recovery,
Agree.
right? Or any combination of those that fit into that framework, right? So those would be the two that I bring back to the conversation that we're having. We're talking primarily about careers, and that would be that it's absolutely not just for IT professionals. It goes so much more than that, and it's also not just about protection slash prevention. It goes beyond that to detection, response, recovery, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll also add that physical security is also part of cybersecurity, just in case people are wondering. And the other side I always talk to people about is supply chain. It's like supply chain in today's world, you is an extension of a company. If you don't protect your supply chain, you can't. You hardly have a successful business because they will put you in trouble. So that's another area that people can look
Well
at.
said. Yeah,
Yeah.
that third party risk is so big for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all that insight. I've enjoyed myself. I'm sure everyone else on Zoom, on LinkedIn, they've enjoyed themselves. It is time to open it up. Do we have anyone with questions in the audience? We'll start from Zoom if you have anyone. You can unmute or raise your hand. Let's see what we got here. See the chat. Okay. Anyone? You're wondering how to get into this space, what to look for, or you even just want advice, just general advice. Anyone? Gloria. Oh yeah, please go ahead. You can unmute
Yeah,
it.
hi. Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. This is all new to me. I'm actually trying to start out in the cybersecurity field. I'm currently in the occupational health and safety side of things, and I'm trying to transition. Again, don't have much IT background, and it's actually really inspiring to hear that people that don't have such experience are able to, progress and do so well in this field. So, I have an eye for safety in the workplace, and I'm just trying to transition this into, cyber safety or security in the cyber world. What would you say, just to go straight to my question, what would you say for someone that's trying to figure out what aspects of, I know cybersecurity has different aspects, but that's trying to start off, entry level and, will enjoy cybersecurity or an aspect of cybersecurity that is in high demand for entry level. Is that question clear enough?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do appreciate you providing your background. And I want to tell you this. You were saying how, you don't have an IT background. Already the background that you have is already significantly better than the background that I had. You're at least connected to the world of safety, right? I was connected to the world of restaurants and factories. Right. So, Gloria, don't worry about your background. You're already better than I was all those years ago. What I would say is one of the best ways when you're really, the two things I would recommend, but when you really don't know, where do I want to start, is what I do is sometimes if you can find that entry level job, it's good to just jump in and get your feet wet and see what it is that you like. That's how you learn the different aspects about it, right? In terms of what are the most in demand entry level jobs, what I always do is when I'm trying to research that is I'll always do online searches, right? So I'll take a look at LinkedIn jobs, Indeed.com, any of those other places, and I'll look for areas that are within the area that I can travel to, and I'll look for areas within the field that I'm considering, and I'll look for what is entry level, right? That's a way that you're going to find out as you start seeing repetition of the same names. That's where you're going to see, I think this is the one that seems in demand. But another thing you can do is just get your hands on articles where you'll see what are people about cybersecurity, what are they writing about today, like what seems to be the new thing, what seems to be something that's hot, right? So we talked about AI, right? AI is going to be something that it is. A lot of people are talking about cybersecurity and AI, and that's just going to grow, right? One of the things that I keep hearing about, I'm very interested in myself, right, is blockchain and using blockchain for cybersecurity. A lot of people are talking about how blockchain is going to be the future of cybersecurity, right? Another thing that I'm hearing people say, and this is very, very getting ahead of ourselves, is a lot of people are saying that when quantum computing comes along, right, and it doesn't exist, it exists in a mild extent today, but it doesn't exist in its full potential today. But people are saying that when quantum computing comes along, quantum computing will be able to break encryption. So much of cybersecurity is based on encrypting things. That's how we protect ourselves. We'll buy a technology, it'll encrypt the message from A to B so the bad guys can't get in. If there's a quantum computing attack that can break that encryption, that's going to spell big trouble. So imagine if you can get ahead and start working on something or working for an organization that's working on something that's some sort of quantum attack protector, right? Which I know it sounds like I'm getting very ahead of myself, but I remember I heard a line. I didn't invent this line, but I heard a line once saying real visionaries are going to work on problems or work on solutions rather that we don't even have problems for. So right now, we don't have a problem for quantum computing attacks because it doesn't exist to its full potential, but we know it's coming. So if you can work for an organization that is working on some anti-quantum computing attack, holy cow, that's going to be amazing, right? Because that's
Absolutely.
working on a solution for a problem that doesn't even exist yet, but is coming, right? So basically, what I'm saying to you is read and do some research to see what's out there, both in terms of who's hiring, what are they hiring for, right? And articles that you can about what people are writing about what's new in cybersecurity. And the great thing is we live in the information age. Really simple to do some research out there. You can find a bunch of stuff, and I know you're going to do very well, Gloria, because like I said, you already have a better background than I did, right?
Thank you. And yeah, in your space in safety, you're likely doing some cybersecurity that you don't know is cybersecurity until you start to learn and you figure that when we're talking about physical security, even what's it called, fire drills and all of that, it's within cybersecurity because you have to protect what you have, right? So there's some, and I'm sure you do risk assessment and all of that in your space too. So working with regulations, some of those would involve cybersecurity. So those are things you can leverage, and maybe that would give you some confidence to let you know that you have what it takes to get there. Thanks so
Absolutely.
much. Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? You can unmute and ask.
Okay, my name is Adekunle Otuyiga. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So, thank you for this, wonderful presentation, and thank you for your experience. You actually made someone like me still feel like cybersecurity looks a bit, more easy than I thought, because and my question is still going around that area of the technicality and like what Dr. Mutak says, seeing cybersecurity as, for example, doing fire drills and all that. So my question is going to be, from your experience, what do you think is the basic, at least the minimum technical knowledge? I mean, technical knowledge I should have to actually, Dr. Mutak, you're laughing.
No, it's a good question.
No,
Really.
because when I look at those jobs, right? They do ask for some basic technical knowledge. So what do you think, in your experience, the basic technical knowledge I should at least have or develop myself in to be able to succeed in cybersecurity? Maybe that's going to be my question.
Sure. No, excellent question. What I would say is one of the most common things that I see in every aspect of so many technical jobs, and I'm going to bring it back to that 5-point framework. I love that 5-point framework so much because it's very simple. It's only 5 points, but it touches on everything, right? Is something to do with the ability to assess the vulnerabilities of a technology. Right? That's something that I see coming up so often, right? Where and it can be fairly basic, right? But if you can test something, and if you can test to see what are the weak spots of a technology, right? So when you're looking to see what you want to study up on, what you want to study up on is something along the lines of that can lead you towards a pathway of doing some sort of vulnerability assessment or some sort of penetration test even. Right? If the 5-point framework of cybersecurity really starts off with identify, and a big part before we can plan how we're going to prevent the problem, how we're going to detect, how we're going to respond, how we're going to cover, is we first need to identify. And a big thing of what we need to identify is we need to identify where we are weak. Right, and I see that's a great place that you could start. That'll then definitely help you get that foot in the door for those technical jobs. Is the ability to do some sort of assessments, right? And with regards to assessments, there's even non-technical assessments. There's interview style assessments, right? You might even want to start with that, right? Where you're talking to an organization and you're simply asking them questions. Right? You're not actually doing anything technical at this point, but you're asking them questions about where they keep their sensitive data, how they handle their business. And through that, you're determining, okay, I've asked you these interview questions and I've determined here are some of your weak spots and here are the things that you need to fix. Right. But from a technical point of view, yes, there are ways where people they will assess certain software. They will assess certain people's security. Assessments is such a big part of it. And it's layered in so many different ways. So if you're looking to learn something technical, that's what I would learn is I would start with that is the ability to assess something because all the planning comes from there. Right. If you're the person that knows how to assess, you're the person that can answer the questions. Hey, this is where we're weak. This is what we need to do to fix it. right?
Absolutely, 100%. I hope that helps, because I was actually going to say the same thing. Because even when you do the technical assessment, like you're talking about, like vulnerability assessment, vulnerability scanning, you would still need the more like interview style, the non-technical assessment of that result before you can even make recommendations, right? Because it would need to be very specific to your organization, right? So thank you for sharing that. And again, it's interesting how, and again, I guess it's the way cybersecurity has been put out there to everybody. It's that, okay, you have to be very technical. You have to be able to configure firewalls and do all that before you can even call yourself a cybersecurity professional. That's not to say those parts don't count, but exactly what Danny said is what I would say. You don't need to do, yes, you need to have it, maybe have a knowledge of it, know how it should be done or how it is done, but not you doing it. Oh, firewall needs to be default denied, this and that. But again, you don't have to go in there and start doing it. Like Danny said, ask questions. The technical guys would show you how they've done it, and you can tell, is it done right? Is it not done right? What recommendations would you make? And is that a weakness or not? So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, we have some questions in the chat. So someone said, is it necessary to start with entry-level positions when transitioning into cybersecurity, especially if you already have transferable skills? And I think I know what that person's talking about. For example, you're doing technical support or system administration, and you've been doing patch management or doing vulnerability scans, like you were saying earlier. Do I need to start from entry-level roles?
So no, it's not necessary to start at entry level, but you have to have a way to connect those dots. So in the example that I use, when that one that person had come to me saying, "Hey, Danny, help me out, I'm having some trouble," right?
Yeah.
They really had nothing else to connect those dots. And I was saying to them, you got to be more humble. This isn't working. But if you have, if let's say the job is saying, we want 3 years experience in such and such field, and you have something and you've got 3 years, it's not quite what they're looking for, but it is transferable. It does make sense. As long as you can communicate that effectively, right? And as long as you have a story that you can tell and you're very good at laying that out, then absolutely, you don't need to start at the beginning. Absolutely, right? But you have to be able to transfer it, and you have to be able to show and prove and communicate that well, right? Because there is a lot of competition out there, right?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's I like that, because I guess our program, the way it is, I know people would say, oh, don't discriminate about those without relatable background. I say that we're not discriminating. We're just working with people that we know based on their background can start from at least intermediate level roles. So we work with people with technical background, audit background, and compliance, right?
Yeah.
So those people we know, we're convinced that they have the skills, they have transferable skills. Again, like I said, it's the ability to communicate that, show that they've done it, and of course, speak the lingo.
That's it, right? The ABCs, right? What's the C of ABCs?
Exactly.
It's communication, right? Like, communicate that you've done it, and if you can do
it,
that,
yeah, exactly.
if it really does make sense, then absolutely, then that'll work, right?
100%, 100%. Thank you for that. I would take the Tito. I see your hand up. I'll take that question before I take the next question in the chat. Yeah. So Tito, if you can unmute and ask the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toby. Thank you so much, Danny. That was a very good good one. Thank you. I really enjoyed myself. Can you hear me? Oh,
Awesome.
great.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. So I love the perspective you brought to this, the five line. And then you mentioned some aspect as well. You mentioned insurance in cybersecurity. You mentioned, now my question is actually, how do you, okay, right now, because I have, my first degree was in microbiology, which was some years ago. And since after I left, I got interested in tech, because I got to know that there are also viruses in tech.
I love it. I love
it. Yeah, so and because I'm also used to the all the medical terms on how to protect things, so in most of, before I came to Canada, I've actually been looking at, okay, how you protect, because same thing with men, I mean with human beings, you just have to encourage them, especially in the medical, you give them how to prevent themselves from getting. So in most tech roles I've actually gotten before I came to Canada, it has been around trying to build policies around, even though maybe not really elaborate as it is right now when I am in Canada. So now what I'm doing now is I'm really like looking towards going into GRC. I'm presently interning in a company after I finished my diploma degree last year with a school in Canada. So I'm interning at the moment, and what I'm doing essentially for them is just to do ISO 27001 certification and SOC 2. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But along the way, I wanted to like also go into the business part. So I started a website, cybertrending.com. And at some point on my LinkedIn, I just say some things that are trending or things I think that can be beneficial to business and at times to individuals. Okay, so my question is this: what in the business aspect? Because I went through your profile and I said that okay, you've actually done some things personally, a lot of things personally. So I just need like a counsel from you. I also want to work, but I'm also looking at, okay, maybe if I can just have like a blog on the hand, which may not take a lot of my time, but also still working for an maybe for a financial institution, or I worked with CRA at some point when I came to Canada. So maybe things that has to do with compliance and privacy, other stuffs. Yeah, I just want your counsel on how you think I can navigate, and maybe just advise me on your journey. I hope you understand me, right?
Sure, sure. What I would say is,
Yeah.
first of all, just based on the very brief moment that we've been talking, just hearing all the things that you've done, you're going to be very successful no matter what you do. Okay, so don't worry about what I say. I would say, one, keep doing what you're doing. You seem like a very, very brilliant man. Okay, uh, let's stay connected. By the way, after this, I have a feeling that you're going to be like a huge. I'm going to be asking you for a job in a few years.
Come
Okay,
on.
so let's
Come
make sure
on.
that we stay connected. What I would
Right.
say to you is, one of the biggest things that I hear from industries where they're saying this industry is in trouble because they keep getting attacked by cyber criminals is the healthcare industry, right? The healthcare industry is constantly being attacked because the cyber, even though they're not always known as having a lot of money, they do have a lot of data. That data that the criminals steal is worth a lot of money, right?
True.
If you could find a way to use your background to say, hey, I'm cybersecurity. I used to be a microbiologist. I understand healthcare. Let me help consult you. If you be the guy that they trust, then you can go out to other companies, other vendors, other technologies and say, hey, if you want into that healthcare company, it's got to be through me and I'm going to take a percentage. You're going to do incredibly well. But I would leverage your background and be the cybersecurity professional for the healthcare industry because they absolutely need it. And you're somebody that they can trust because you know their language, you speak their language of microbiology, but you also understand cybersecurity, right? That's what I would do, is find a way to focus on them, right? Because they need it.
Absolutely.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Danny. I'll
You know,
send you a friend request now.
you know
Yeah,
what
please,
they say.
please.
Yeah.
The key thing is cybersecurity. You need to understand the businesses you're working with. If you don't understand what they do, you can't help them. So if you have that for you, just own your story, right? Own it, and that would be like your selling point in this market. Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have 2 minutes to go, but I see a question in the chat. So what's the minimum qualification to start a career in cybersecurity?
So, interesting question. It's a bit of a mouthful. I've preached about this many, many times. Before I answer that question, let me give you a quick story about me. So I've been in cybersecurity for more than 20 years. I've done some things that I'm proud of. I've sold 2 cybersecurity companies. And in all that time, guess how many certifications I have?
Maybe 2.
0. I have 0. Okay. So what are the minimum requirements? It honestly really depends on where you go and what aspect of cybersecurity that you play in. I'm not saying that everyone can get away with getting 0. In the beginning of my career, I signed up for a lot of courses. And what I noticed about a lot of courses, it was free until you got the certification part. The certification part is the only part that you had to pay for. And I was like, well, I don't have money for this right now, so I'm going to skip the certification. I just wanted the free information. So I was learning and I was always showing value. But there is no one set of minimum, because cybersecurity is so vast and there's so many different ways in. There is no one, okay, you need this or you can't get in. It doesn't exist, right? It'll depend on what aspect. It depends on what you're doing. And it depends on so many things. Don't get bogged down with that. find something that you want to get involved with and let them tell you this is the minimum of what you need, if there is in fact a minimum, right? For me, as I said, over 20 years, certifications, 0, right? But sold 2 companies within this business. So it all depends.
Absolutely. I hope that helps the person. I do. Oh, I'm not sure who asked that question. Oh, okay, Kazim. I'm not sure he's still on, but that is definitely a very thank you for sharing. And I would not have guessed that. I don't know if you have certifications right now, but wow, that's incredible. And people always ask about certifications every time. Can you still
Sure.
hear me?
Yep.
I think I'm frozen. Oh, okay. And
Your
Emmanuel, you
vocals are
asked
coming through. The picture looks frozen, but your
about
vocals are coming through.
okay, that's good to know. So Emmanuel, you asked about where you can watch this later. It's right now, it's streaming live on YouTube, so you can go back. I've shared our channel. You can watch it there. And of course, it will be on LinkedIn for a while because it's live on LinkedIn as well. So I don't know if there's any other question. We're already over time. I'm happy to end it
Well,
here.
one final thing before we get
Yes,
let
sure.
go. Everyone on here, guys, if you're on here, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with all of you guys. All seem like a bunch of bright individuals, and I'd love to stay connected. The last time I searched my name on LinkedIn, I think there's only one Danny Pehar on LinkedIn. So let's get connected on there, and let's stay friends, and let's just exchange ideas. That's another big tip I would have is just make friends with people who are trying to get in and who are in, and that's what'll help you get ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wow, I was gonna ask you to give your last remark, but that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for another wonderful. Oh, Michael, do you have a question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to raise up my hand, but I couldn't find that button.
Okay, sure. Please go ahead. Ask the question.
Danny, thanks for the insight. I really appreciate this information, and I really like your background. I normally tell doctor that I don't think I have IT background, and he always says to me, "Oh, you've done a lot of things in security." And just so you know, I'm in supply chain, and I heard what you said about third-party risk analyst. So I would really appreciate if you can your guidance on how I can further develop my skills and also my expertise to make a meaningful, contribution in cybersecurity within supply chain. Because about what you said about it, and what step do you recommend that I can, take to enhance my understanding of cybersecurity and best practices in supply chain?
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is let's make sure that you and I connect also offline. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an article about some sort of supply chain cybersecurity basics, right? Just a good understanding of that third party risk and what are those things that we should look for, right? Then I'm going to send you another article that's just kind of a very sort of an entry level cybersecurity article, and then that's where I like to start.
Yeah.
Right. I like to start off small, and then I like to see where things go from there.
Okay.
Right. But we'll connect offline, and I'll send you those 2 articles.
Okay.
And then as you have more questions, just reach out to me, and we'll get into it more.
All right. I already added you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much, Danny. I've enjoyed myself here today. Just feels like we should have another 30 minutes, but I know you've got things to do, and thank you so much for being here today. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And I can only wish you the very best. And I know we'll be reaching out to you again to give it another dose of this. I've had fun.
Anytime. No, this was my pleasure. Had a great time today.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And until next time, bye for now, everyone.
Have a great Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.